Good morning to you. Mark Suttoth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Monday, October 22nd, 2018. I am in Tallahassee, Florida. I have come back to the region where Michael made landfall to pick up equipment that was left behind, and I'm going to show you the results of some of that here at the end. Another GoPro camera that we had set up in Eastpoint. It was retrieved by the National Weather Service as they did their surveys in the days immediately following Michael. And I met a gentleman down here last night, and he returned the equipment to me, and I'm going to show you the results. Pretty amazing. So let's take a look, though, at the tropics and some other interesting things first. We do have two systems in the eastern Pacific that will bring significant impacts to Mexico, and those would be Vicente and extremely dangerous, Category 4, almost 5, Willa. And here you can see them on the map. There's Vicente, a weak tropical storm, but a tropical storm nonetheless. And here is Willa, and this will make landfall up here in Mexico sometime tomorrow. We can see that on the track map. First, Vicente going to come up and make landfall as a big rainmaker. And then we have Willa, and it'll make landfall in a less populated area than it could. I'll show you that in a moment on the Google Maps. And then it's interesting because both systems sort of ghost their energy, will combine and head towards the Northwest Gulf and spread energy and heat. Very important, all the heat that's contained in these tropical cyclones. And that'll eventually spawn a surface low that gets involved with upper level energy coming out of the lower 48, and we're going to have a coastal storm off the east coast of the United States. Complicated, but very interesting nonetheless, because we're going to see a lot of rainfall and storminess across this region, and I'll show you that on the GFS. We'll take a look at the North American domain of the GFS in just a moment. First satellite loop here from Tropical Tidbits, and you can see the cold air advection that has taken place over the western Atlantic as a stout cold front, temperatures in the upper 20s to 30s here in the Piedmont. Very refreshing if you like fall, and a definite end to summer. All that summer weather we had into October that led to Michael, the very warm ridging that we had with the anomalous ridging over the eastern United States and southeast Canada. Well, in terms of the summer pattern, that is finally gone. I'm usually not a fan of fall. There's just something depressing about it. But this year, it's a very welcome sight. And it's here. You can even see the cooler air showing up on the infrared here with this lighter color. But down here, these lighter colors indicate very cold cloud tops in the upper part of not the atmosphere, but the sensible part where we have our weather, and that indicates very cold cloud tops with a small but potent central dense overcast associated. We call that a CDO, associated with Willa. I'll try to zoom in just a little bit here, if this will let me. Will you let me? It's trying not to let me. How rude. Come on. There we go. It let me. Again, I'm operating without my mouse. I'm actually sitting in the bed at the hotel room. I've already showered, I'm dressed, I'm ready to go. So I'm not being lazy, but it's very comfortable, and I can close myself up in this room, and housekeeping doesn't hear me out in the hallway. What is that guy talking about in there? Anyway, there's Willa, and there's a couple things you notice. It's a fairly small hurricane, thank goodness. The area of impact won't be enormous, but you can also see that the moisture is already getting pulled out, and that will eventually get entrained with some energy coming down this way, and we're going to have a heck of a storm come up the east coast, and it might turn inland depending on how the upper pattern evolves. Snow for the higher elevations, coastal impacts along the mid-Atlantic and northeast, probably from the Outer Banks of North Carolina and points north. Coastal flooding, probable. Beach erosion, likely. Strong winds, maybe some power outages, maybe some heavy rain. In fact, everybody from this part of Mexico across the mountains and then into Texas and all the way up the East Coast will be impacted indirectly from the effects of these Pacific tropical cyclones. Vicente, which is right here, and Willa, which is right here. So very, very interesting connection and how that's all coming together here in the fall as jet stream energy gets involved. So where is this going to make landfall? It looks like somewhere in this vicinity here. And as you can see, there's a couple things to point out. It's north and west of Puerto Vallarta and south of Mazatlan. Now hopefully it'll be far enough south of Mazatlan to avoid a direct impact on that fairly robust population center. So if it can make landfall somewhere in here, it wouldn't be quite as devastating in terms of the population. So we'll just have to see how that pans out. That's what it's looking like. And then you notice all of this in here, high mountains, and that will rip the bottom part, that 850 millibar chart that I love to show you. Wait till you see that on the GFS here in just a moment. So the low level part, the guts of the system, will be stripped away and kind of snagged on these mountains, and then the mid and upper level energy will continue across and survive intact, moisture, energy, vorticity, all of that as it gets into Texas and then eventually across the northern Gulf Coast, and then feeding into that developing storm off the East Coast. So let's put this into motion, and it's a very big map, so I'm going to scroll down here, and we'll watch this a couple of times, this loop. So this is the system. You can see it right there. Got ahead of me, but we'll let it start over. Crawls across the northern Gulf Coast, across the I-10 corridor, and then look, it develops into that strong system there. But there it is. There's Willa. This is the 850 chart. Makes landfall, and then you can track just a little bit of that energy right there. See it coming across, gets into the warm western Atlantic there, finally develops another surface low, and then up it goes somewhere into New England. And in terms of where it ends up, that's a week away, by the way, 7 days out. So depending on how the upper levels go, it could pinwheel in earlier, maybe towards Jersey or Long Island and to Connecticut. It's hard to say for sure. Will it be tropical? No, this will be a mid-latitude storm, cold, not bitter cold, but it's not a tropical cyclone coming up the East Coast there that you see. But it will have coastal impacts, some strong wind, beach erosion, as I mentioned, some overwash in some of the sensitive areas. North Carolina Outer Banks. I was in Rodanthe setting up everything for Florence and saw the vulnerable houses there. There's going to be some pretty significant impacts from this, but those are down the road a spell, and we have a couple of days to watch and see how that unfolds, and whether or not I will be on the road somewhere in here. I say it's likely at this point. I want to mention something too as this goes along. You folks down here in the recovery areas from Michael, and that includes into southwest Georgia, please make sure that roofs that are damaged, houses that have holes in them, whatever, businesses, that you are properly tarped and prepared, because this is going to bring rain and some wind. This low, as it develops across the I-10 corridor, will bring some inclement weather that's going to be, basically rubbing salt in the wound. You need the rainfall. Fresh water is a good thing, and luckily it'll be moving. It's not going to stall and dump, 10 inches of rain or anything, but a 1 to 3 inch amount of rain is a good bet across this area, more farther to the east. So relief organizations, and those of you that are watching this that know people that are down there helping, please pass along what I'm saying here about this threat of rainfall making matters worse, And if somebody's waiting for a tarp, get it done. If somebody has a sort of a quick fix tarp and it needs to be secured, get it done. Get it done now, today. Tomorrow, okay, but sooner rather than later, all right? Honestly, really, people down there, and I'm getting ready to go visit them, they're hurting, and they don't need this. Luckily, it's going to be moving on through, but it is a problem, and it's going to add some stress to the situation. So please keep that in mind. And then, like I said, as we monitor this post-landfall in Mexico, we will see what impacts this storm has for portions of the Mid-Atlantic and the East Coast. So one of the reasons that I came back down here, like I said, I wanted to pick up my GoPro camera from this gentleman that works for the state. I'm going to leave his name anonymous just so he doesn't not get in trouble, but external affairs and so forth. It's just better to keep it anonymous. A real nice guy that helped me out here working with the Weather Service. We had a live camera here at Eastpoint, and then of course I set up one of the GoPro cameras as backup, because sure enough, Verizon's fiber had a lot of trouble, and we lost the signal to all of our cameras at some point during what was more than likely a Category 5 hurricane. My opinion, I'm entitled to it. I think you would agree in many cases here. So the GoPro, of course, kept going, and it's high definition, and while not nearly as dramatic, honestly, and obviously as what we saw in Mexico Beach, here's what we captured, a little segment of it here. It's about 1 minute 44 seconds, the day of landfall from Hurricane Michael. This is in the morning time, early. Progressing through the morning, looking towards the Gulf and St. George Island. There's the surge starting to come in right there. See that? The boat. Surge starting to come up across the 98. And now it's really rolling in. Look at this ice chest right here. More boats. So anyway, you get the idea. I'll make this public early this afternoon, and you can view it in its entirety and share it, etc., off of my YouTube channel. But it really goes to show that these GoPro cameras, we love the live stuff. Live is so important, and I'm going to continue to do that, obviously. But in these really intense hurricanes, I dare say we're never going to be able to get it to where they last the whole time because of the infrastructure. I don't know what the carriers are going to have to do to make it so that it's invincible. Something on the back end keeps going out. A couple of the cell towers actually folded over. We've seen pictures of that. If we can just not have Cat 5s hit the United States, that would be okay with me. And you may not believe me when I say that. Trust me, I have no interest in Category 4s and 5s. They're just too strong. The 3s are bad enough. I mean, even with a Category 1 with Florence, you understand what I'm getting at here. So the GoPro system is the way to go. And, we're going to acquire more of them, and we're just going to have a policy. especially in these intense hurricanes, Category 3 and up, and depending on where it is in terms of the impacts, maybe even 2s, we're going to put GoPros out, more and more of them, and it may be just like this situation where we're almost 2 weeks after the event, but at least I've got video that I can show you of the impacts from an amazing perspective. And you saw how clear that the video is. It's remarkable. So I'm very proud of the project, and I'm glad to be able to share it here with you today. All right, well, I'm done. We kind of ran long, but I had a lot to cover, and I wanted to be able to show you that video. I will be going down to St. Mark's, to Indian Pass, through Eastpoint, eventually to Mexico Beach. I'm going to be flying the quadcopter today. I've got 105 minutes of flight time worth of batteries, so I'm going to do a lot of aerial video to try to show you some things on the documentary that'll be ready next spring. A lot of work to be done here. I want to try to interview some people and tell the story more than just what we're seeing and have seen on the news. And I'm going to be coming back down a couple of more times over the coming months. So there you go. I'll have another update for you tomorrow. We'll see what happens with Willa and the East Coast first sort of nor'easter of the upcoming winter season, the fall and winter season. I am Mark Settle, HurricaneTrack.com here in the panhandle of Florida, Tallahassee, Mexico Beach. Eventually I'll start heading home tonight. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. I'll have more for you tomorrow morning.